Supermarket mania unfolding across the southeast today as crowds queued for Coles vouchers. Hundreds of thousands of dollars worth handed out by billionaire Adrian Portelli, who says he just wants to help those doing it tough.
Hello, I'm Linton Besser. Welcome to Media Watch. And Aussie billionaire Adrian Portelli, known as Lambo Guy, was travelling around the country again last week, handing out $100 and $200 supermarket vouchers and revelling in the rockstar treatment.
Arriving with a Hollywood-like entourage.
Why the fuss? Not a movie star, a billionaire with loose purse strings.
You're crazy!
With claims that thousands of people had spent hours lining up, some even camping out, to be guaranteed a prize. The media was gushing about Adrian Portelli's pre-holiday act of kindness.
Ask anyone here.
Cheers, mate.
And Adrian Portelli is a saint.
Oh, I'm being blessed by Adrian.
People are doing it tough out there, so if you've got the means to do it, you may as well do it.
Over 2 days, as Portelli skipped from shopping centre to shopping centre in Queensland, then New South Wales, his giveaways generated warm and fuzzy stories for no fewer than 26 bulletins across almost the entire country. It was a public relations triumph for the ages. But a question: how does Adrian Portelli make all that money? Well, here's a hint from a few months back.
Melbourne's self-made billionaire Adrian Portelli is now facing criminal charges. He's been accused of running an unlawful lottery in Australia, allegedly preying on low-income Aussies.
That's right. While Adrian Portelli's lawyers say he intends to fight the charges, his company is accused of breaking the law in South Australia.
At the centre of this investigation is accusations that the company is actually a subscription-based lottery. Now, Portelli advertises it as a membership reward service, offering shopping discounts.
All of that seems to have been forgotten, however, in the Robin Hood-style fairy tale spun by the TVs last week. The Alliance for Gambling Reform told Media Watch it had little doubt these media spectacles would push fans towards Portelli's website and his prize draws, which he spruiks like this.
OK, with the $1 million being given away tonight, how do you enter, you may ask? Simply hit the get off button below or the link above. Get on it now because the gates are about to close.
The anti-gambling campaigners also told us
it's disappointing that these gift card giveaway sprees are being lapped up by the media without them stopping to question the motivations and practices of the businessmen.
Portelli insisted his supermarket giveaways are not about driving business.
They are not transactional. I do not gain anything from doing them, and that's exactly the point. I've never invited the media to these events.
And as for those charges of past criminal conduct, he describes them as little more than compliance issues. So, amidst all the puff last week, who did manage to remind us that the Lambo Guy has been in the limelight for all the wrong reasons? Well, I'm pleased to say the blue ribbon goes to 10 Late News.
Adrian Portelli has paid for the grocery bills of hundreds of Queenslanders in a surprise appearance. All this coming as Portelli fights charges of running an unlawful lottery.
It really is that easy. Adrian Portelli might be a flashy bauble for commercial TV, but why deny your viewers the full story, especially when the bloke has recruited people just like them to a giveaway scheme which South Australia says may have constituted a crime. And now to the Queen of Australian racing, Gai Waterhouse, and an exclusive interview on Sky Racing broadcast 2 weeks ago.
Ray Thomas sits down with a living legend and racing trailblazer.
I got my number 1 licence and walked out the door.
Gai, an audience with the First Lady.
The Sunday Telegraph had actually promised that this fireside chat with one of the best-known faces in the country would run 2 weeks earlier. It did not, putting the Sydney Morning Herald's bloodhounds on the scent of a story, led by the paper's legendary investigative reporter Kate McClymont, who published this online.
The racing industry was abuzz as to why the heavily promoted interview with trainer Gai Waterhouse, the undisputed queen of the slipper, had been pulled from television.
So why had it been pulled? Gai had a theory.
Waterhouse believes it may have been linked to criticism she made of the Rosehill sale during the interview.
A proposal to sell Sydney's historic Rosehill Racecourse and turn it into 25,000 homes has riven the industry. One of the most important players in the saga is a man named Peter V'landys, the high-profile head of Racing New South Wales and one of the most powerful sports administrators in the country. Gai Waterhouse, meanwhile, is leading a rebellion against the sale. So when McClymont filed the story about the TV interview mysteriously disappearing, she made sure to quote Waterhouse on the power of Peter V'landys.
You have a very powerful CEO in Mr. V'landys, and he controls racing and he controls everyone in racing.
But when McClymont logged in the following morning, she discovered the Waterhouse quote had been scrubbed from her copy, and she hit the roof. In the middle of the newsroom, McClymont stood up and demanded answers of the Herald's editor, Bevan Shields, in a very public display of anger. Within a few hours, the Herald's editor had backed down and the quote was reinstated. Kate McClymont told us,
"It's true that we had a spirited exchange, but it's all part of the hurly-burly of a newsroom, and the issue was soon resolved."
And as for Ray Thomas's big interview with Gai Waterhouse, when it did finally make it to air, just like Kate McClymont's story, it had been stripped of any criticism of Peter V'landys and Racing New South Wales. Gai Waterhouse told Media Watch,
"I was disappointed but not surprised that my Sky Channel interview was so heavily censored, as was the interviewer Ray Thomas."
While Sky Racing's owner, Tabcorp, and Peter V'landys both said Racing New South Wales had no direct involvement in the affair, it seems the niche racing broadcaster has for some time taken a deferential approach to Peter V'landys' organisation, as revealed 9 years ago by none other than Kate McClymont, who had got her hands on a Sky Racing policy that
requires Sky employees to depict the racing industry in a positive manner and not to be disparaging, critical or negative of Racing New South Wales.
It's not just Sky Racing which has been at pains to tread carefully around Racing New South Wales and its 20-year boss, Peter V'landys. We've looked through the Daily Telegraph's reporting of the man since the start of last year and found barely a word of criticism. Oh, but we did find the odd bouquet.
Another St. Peter miracle!
The future's looking $1 billion with V'landys' vision.
Greatest showman!
So, if the Telegraph and Sky Racing are avoiding criticism of Racing New South Wales, has the same disease now infected the Herald? The paper insists not, and pointed to a number of stories it's published, including these, which have indeed been critical of Racing New South Wales and its boss. But the recent row on the newsroom floor between the Herald's editor and its star reporter was the second time that Gai Waterhouse's criticisms of Peter V'landys and Racing New South Wales were deemed not fit to print. In July last year, a reporter and photographer were assigned by the paper to cover a parliamentary inquiry investigating the Rosehill controversy. First up was the Queen of Racing herself, who, when asked about witnesses being pressured not to appear at the inquiry, delivered her famous remarks.
It's a bit like the elephant in the room, isn't it? That's the problem. You know, you have a very powerful CEO in Mr. V'landys, and he controls racing, and he controls everyone in racing. You only have to look at the newspapers nowadays and the media coverage. It's very controlled.
When it was his turn to appear, Peter V'landys told the inquiry claims made against him were part of a smear campaign. And last week he told Media Watch the Waterhouse allegations were false. But her testimony at the time helped to set the racing world alight.
It's just phenomenal. We have rarely heard comments of this type against Racing New South Wales and Peter V'landys in particular.
And for the first time in a long time, Peter V'landys was attacked by industry participants especially.
The story was soon published by the ABC, news.com.au and Channel 9, all of which reported the Waterhouse allegations. The Daily Telegraph also published a story that day which, curiously, contained none of Gai Waterhouse's criticisms of Peter V'landys. Now, we know the Sydney Morning Herald sent staff to cover this story, so what did it publish? Not a single word. We asked Nine to explain this decision, but it didn't. Instead, a spokesman for the company defended its history of critical reporting across sport and politics.
The Herald has published multiple stories in which politicians and racing industry figures, including Gai Waterhouse, have expressed their opposition to the Rosehill proposal and or unhappiness about Racing New South Wales.
But Gai Waterhouse was mightily unimpressed by the Herald and the Telegraph. She told Media Watch,
"The nature of my evidence would have to be classified as hard-hitting. It is noteworthy, but not surprising to me, that my evidence was ignored by the Sydney Morning Herald and the Daily Telegraph."
If Gai Waterhouse is right, why would Sydney's two oldest fish wrappers treat Racing New South Wales and its boss Peter V'landys with kid gloves? Could it have anything to do with the millions of dollars that flow to them both from bookmakers facilitated by Racing New South Wales for the publication of form guides? Or is it, no, it couldn't possibly be because journos are being offered a free lunch? Peter V'landys is famous for lunching media executives and scribes in his corporate box at Royal Randwick, with a menu of oysters, fish or steak and a creme brulee, all washed down with plenty of free grog. As for the man himself, he's famously partial to a plate of hot chips. Peter V'landys is not just the head of the New South Wales racing regulator on a $1 million a year salary. Incredibly, he's also the head of one of Australia's biggest sports, rugby league. And when he hit upon the idea of launching the 2024 and 2025 NRL seasons in Las Vegas, he was lauded as a visionary by a media circus which had followed him across the Pacific. And let's not forget, the Herald's owner, Channel 9, which currently broadcasts NRL games, wants desperately to land the next lucrative rights contract due to begin in 2028, which Peter V'landys knew all too well.
Australian Rugby League chairman Peter V'landys presided like a lord. The spectre of a new round of broadcast rights negotiations hung heavily in the air.
From on the strip herself, the Herald's chief writer, Jordan Baker, gave readers a glimpse of the extraordinary media contingent basking in the Nevada sun, including Nine's chairwoman, Catherine West, chief executive Matt Stanton, publishing boss Tori Maguire and executive editor Luke McElveen, all of whom Nine paid to send over. From News Corp, meanwhile, she reported the attendance of local boss Michael Miller, the head of Foxtel Patrick Delaney and the editor of the Daily Telegraph Ben English, as well as executives from Seven and the Daily Mail. But who helped to pay for the writers and photographers and even the Sydney Morning Herald editor himself to go to Sin City?
The Herald's travel expenses to Las Vegas have been partly funded by the NRL.
The Herald's very diligent disclosures were matched by the Telly. Its editor, Ben English, told Media Watch he believes the best way for an event like this to be reported is first-hand, and that
the Daily Telegraph has no commercial agreements that constrain our ability to report as we see fit, and no person or organisation has the power to vet editorial content.
Peter V'landys said cultivating journalists was merely a part of his job, adding,
"I reject any claim of media censorship or control. Racing New South Wales operates transparently, consulting broadly with stakeholders."
Now, lest you think we're going a bit too far in describing Peter V'landys' success in courting the media, we'll let him explain in his own words how he used his corporate box at Randwick Racecourse to wield influence, in this case, to the benefit of the NRL.
I bring the decision makers, both in politics, in media, and anywhere else, to that room, and they become your friends. I just want to entertain them to have a good time. But in the back of my mind, I know one day I'm going to need them, or that relationship is going to, pay a dividend. So, in 10 years of running this director's room, I never called anyone for anything. COVID hits, I rang every one of them. And I got a result out of every one of them. I rang the editor of the Daily Telegraph, the editor of the Sydney Morning Herald, anyone that I entertained, everybody.
And the man known everywhere in Sydney as PVL hinted there were other power plays he can't talk about.
Having, the major decision makers in the media ringing the politicians and et cetera, paid enormous dividends, and there's a lot of stories I could tell you, which I can't because we're filming it, how politicians changed their views very quickly when there was media pressure on them.
We're in no doubt about it, Peter. And really, the fact that PVL enjoys such outlandish influence across media and politics is devastating, but not for him. V'landys insists that soaping up journalists is him just doing his job on behalf of two major sports, and he's dead right. But as for the press, that's another matter entirely. There can be no excuse, really, for the Telegraph's appalling lack of critical coverage. And while the Herald's editing decisions may have been arguable at the time, when your news organisation is also trousering tens of thousands of dollars of perks from the very institutions you're writing about, well, you can't but expect your senior journalists, or for that matter, Media Watch, to begin asking whether someone is getting a free ride. And that's all from us tonight. Be sure to check us out on iView as well as X, YouTube and Facebook. You can find full statements on our website. And don't forget to send us your tips. See you next week.